My name is Judge Gregory Sleet, and this is my story. I started out as an assistant public defender in Philadelphia. That has helped shape my career for sure, because that's where I learned how to try cases. And that has essentially informed everything that I've done since as a lawyer. The Delaware Department of Justice was very interested in bringing me on as a senior trial lawyer, where I handled matters where the state of Delaware was being sued, and then found myself moving on into the corporate arena. Moved into Hercules legal department. Interesting, very interesting corporate work. Antitrust, licensing issues, all kinds of contract issues, litigation. Because of my litigation background, I oversaw some high stakes for the company litigation. From there, I had an opportunity which came to pass as a result of the intervention of one of my mentors, a fellow by the name of James Gilliam Jr., a very influential lawyer, and American lawyer and businessman. He had been contacted about an opportunity in the United States Justice Department, specifically the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware. Not an assistant United States attorney, was a presidentially appointed United States attorney. And the person who had contacted him was someone who was known to me by name but reputation, but I had never met, but was actually a friend of Jim's, and that was Joseph R. Biden Jr. He suggested that I take an interview with members of Joe Biden's staff, so I did that. I spoke with people whose opinions I valued, a number of them, and I eventually said to Biden, "Okay, let's do this," and he submitted my name. I was nominated and eventually confirmed. The next major stop for me was the United States District Court, District of Delaware, and the short story about that, still Senator Biden. By this time, we had talked a few times and gotten to know one another a little bit as I went through the nominating process. Senator said, "Look, there's a vacancy on the district court. I would like you to consider it. I want to tell you that, again, you'll be the first African-American to serve on that court in Delaware's history." I wasn't interested in being a judge. My next stop, I had plans back into the private sector. I talked to a number of people, again, many of the same people I talked to before. Both times it was important to me and to them, those who were advising me, that, "Greg, this is something that you probably should do, that you've been given to do," and especially being the first of your race to occupy these important jobs. And so I agreed ultimately with that, and that was a big motivator for me. And so that led to my swearing in 1998. Stayed on that job. I stayed on the bench for 20 years, 7 of those as chief judge. And in 2018, my decision to retire from the bench and to join James. Great influencer for me was my father. Of course, both of my parents were an incredible influence upon me, but it was my dad, I think largely because of his work. That he went about his work, that is, being a photographer, a photojournalist for 40 years for the Johnson Publishing Company, that publishes a number of publications, but most famously Ebony and Jet magazines, and the worldview that he developed from the stories all over the world that he covered, and most especially for me, the stories of the life of Martin Luther King Jr. My dad was privileged to be invited into Dr. King's home at very private and intimate times with Dr. King and his family to photograph them for history and to accompany him, or to at least be there from the days of Selma right on up through his death. And the Pulitzer Prize winning photograph that my father took of Mrs. King, Greta Scott King, and Bernice, one of the daughters, in her lap, squirming in her lap, inside the Ebenezer Baptist Church at Dr. King's funeral. If I had to come up with a title for my life story, it would be Prepared for Change. And I say that because I've had so much change in my legal career. The path ultimately to the bench and to this place in time has been very circuitous. My ability to be flexible, to be prepared for and unafraid of change, even though I might have some trepidation, not ultimately debilitating trepidation, has enabled me to arrive at this place in my professional life. My name is Judge Gregory Sleet, and I'm proud to be an arbitrator, mediator, and neutral analyst here at JAMS.